Dyatlov Pass is a very famous story about these hikers that go missing in the 1950s.
When investigators found a camera buried deep in the snow at Dyatlov Pass in Soviet Russia, they never expected what they would discover inside. The horrifying photos revealed something far more chilling than anyone imagined.
And so these 9 hikers were the best at mountaineering by far. They're like celebrities in mountaineering.
And what we found changed everything we thought we knew about that terrible night in 1959. The expedition that started it all. Back in 1959, Igor Dyatlov had big dreams. This 23-year-old student from the Ural Polytechnic Institute wanted to lead the adventure of a lifetime. He gathered his closest friends and fellow students for a skiing trip through the frozen wilderness of Siberia's northern Ural Mountains. This wasn't just any ordinary trip. They were aiming for Grade 3 accreditation, the highest level a Soviet hiker could achieve. The group was made up of experienced hikers who knew what they were doing. Each member already had Grade 2 hiking certificates and plenty of ski trip experience under their belts. They packed everything they needed for the dangerous journey, from warm clothes to cameras to capture their adventure. Little did they know that these cameras would later reveal secrets that would baffle investigators for decades. Igor Dyatlov was the leader of the group. He was known for being careful, smart, and always prepared for any situation. His friends trusted him, which is why they agreed to follow him on this dangerous trek through some of the most remote mountains in the Soviet Union. The other members included Zinaida Kolmogorova, Lyudmila Dubinina, Alexander Kolovatov, Rostom Slobodin, Yuri Krivonashenko, Yuri Doroshenko, Nikolai Tibos-Brignolo, and Semyon Zolotaryov. What made this group special was how well they worked together. Most of them had known each other for years through their studies at the Ural Polytechnic Institute. They had gone on hiking trips before and trusted each other with their lives. This trust would become incredibly important in the days to come. On January 25, 1959, the explorers set off from Sverdlovsk, excited about the challenging 300-kilometer, 186 miles trek ahead. The mood was high, and everyone was ready for the adventure. They carried multiple cameras with them, eager to document their journey and prove they had completed the difficult route required for their certification. But fate had other plans brewing in those frozen mountains. Just 3 days into their journey, on January 28th, one of the hikers named Yuri Yudin fell seriously ill. He had rheumatism and a heart condition that made it too dangerous for him to continue. With heavy hearts, the group said goodbye to their friend as he turned back home. This decision, though sad at the time, would ultimately save his life and make him the only witness to what the group was like before they encountered whatever terror awaited them in the mountains. Igor Dyatlov had embarked on this journey with big dreams. He wanted to be remembered as an amazing hiker, and in some days he would. However, he could have never predicted that the area would one day be named after him, not because of his extraordinary feat, but because of the unspeakable horrors he led his friends to that night. The night everything changed. January 31st, 1959 started like any other day of their expedition. The 9 remaining hikers were making good progress toward their goal of reaching Dyatlov Pass. They were experienced, well-prepared, and confident in their abilities. Their cameras were capturing beautiful images of the snowy landscape, and their team worked together as they moved through the challenging terrain. But the mountain had other plans, and what those cameras would soon record would haunt investigators for decades. A severe snowstorm hit the area, forcing the group to change their planned route. The weather was getting worse by the hour, with winds picking up and snow falling heavier than expected. Instead of following their original path, they found themselves climbing up the slopes of Holochal, which the local people called Dead Mountain. The name should have been a warning, but these experienced hikers had faced bad weather before and weren't easily scared. The group's decision to continue up the mountain despite the worsening conditions shows just how determined they were to complete their mission. They had come so far and worked so hard to get to this point that turning back wasn't really an option in their minds. Their cameras captured images of them pushing forward through the snow, their faces showing determination mixed with the strain of fighting against the harsh weather. Despite the brutal conditions and temperatures dropping below -40 degrees Fahrenheit, the group pressed on. They were experienced winter hikers who had dealt with extreme cold before, but this night would test them in ways they never expected. As evening approached, they decided to set up camp on the exposed slopes of the mountain, seeking shelter from the brutal wind and snow that was getting worse every hour. The photographs from this time show the team working together to set up their tent in difficult conditions. Everyone was doing their part, and despite the harsh weather, they still seemed to be in good spirits. Inside their tent, the hikers arranged their belongings neatly. Shoes were lined up carefully, equipment was organized and stored properly, and they even had partially cooked food ready for their meal. Everything seemed normal and well organized, just like you would expect from experienced hikers who knew what they were doing. The cameras were safely stored with the rest of their gear, ready to capture more memories of their adventure the next day. But something happened that night that changed everything. The hikers never resumed their mission. The following day, they were already gone. But they didn't just pass away in their tents, and their bodies were not lying nearby, exposed to the elements. No, the mystery of their disappearance was much harder to solve. The cameras that were found deep in Dyatlov Pass would later reveal clues about what might have occurred, but the full truth remains hidden in those final, terrifying moments when everything went wrong. The disturbing discovery. When the hikers failed to return on schedule, search teams were sent out to find them. The families were worried sick, and the authorities knew something was seriously wrong. These were experienced hikers who always followed their planned schedule, so when they didn't show up when expected, everyone feared the worst. On February 26, 1959, the searchers made a chilling discovery on the slopes of Horrifying. They found the group's tent, but it wasn't the scene they expected. What they discovered would raise more questions than answers. The tent was partially collapsed and covered with snow. It had been ripped apart as if the hikers had desperately tried to escape something terrifying. The cuts in the fabric were clean and deliberate, made by knives from inside. This was strange, because experienced hikers would never cut their tent unless they were in extreme danger and couldn't get out the normal way. All their belongings were still inside the tent: shoes, clothes, food, their cameras. The scene suggested that whatever happened, it happened very fast. The hikers had fled so quickly that they didn't even have time to put on their boots or grab their coats. This was especially baffling because these were experienced winter hikers who knew that going outside without proper clothing in those temperatures was a death sentence. The searchers found a flashlight on top of the tent, which was strange because it suggested the hikers might have been planning to return. So where were they? Where had they vanished to? Following the footprints in the snow, searchers found the first two bodies about 300 meters from the tent. Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonashenko were found near a small fire, dressed only in their underwear despite the freezing temperatures. Investigators immediately suspected they had died of hypothermia, a condition when the body temperature drops so low the entire body eventually shuts down. In 25% of the cases, a person suffering from hypothermia experiences a delusion called paradoxical undressing, which leads the victim to believe their body is overheating instead of freezing, and thus results in them discarding their clothes. The fact that they had managed to start a fire showed that they had some survival skills and weren't completely panicked, but it also raised questions about why they had left the tent in the first place. Krivonashenko had burns on his hands and a piece of flesh in his mouth, suggesting he had bitten his hand in pain or desperation. This detail was particularly disturbing because it suggested he was in extreme distress before he died. The burns on his hands were also surprising. They were more severe than you would expect from just trying to keep a fire going. But why had they left the tent in the first place? And where were the others? A few days later, 3 more bodies were discovered. Igor Dyatlov, Zenaida Kolmogorova, and Rustem Slobodin were found along the path back to the tent, as if they had tried to return but couldn't make it. They had all died from hypothermia, but Slobodin also had a small skull fracture. The positions of their bodies suggested they had been trying to crawl back to the tent when they collapsed. But the worst was yet to come. 4 more hikers were still missing, and their fate would prove to be far more horrifying than anyone could have imagined. The Ravine of Horrors. In May 1959, searchers made their most disturbing discovery after the snow had melted. The remaining 4 hikers, Nikolai Thibault Brignol, Lyudmila Dubinina, Semyon Zolotaryov, and Alexander Kolovatov, were found in a ravine under several feet of snow. But their condition was unlike anything the investigators had seen before, and it would change everything about how people understood this case. The medical examinations revealed injuries that seemed impossible to explain through natural causes. Thibault Brignol had suffered a severely fractured skull that would have required tremendous force to inflict. Dubinina and Zolotaryov had massive chest fractures that were compared to injuries from a car crash. The doctors who examined the bodies said the force required to cause these injuries was equivalent to being hit by a truck. These injuries were even more mysterious because there were no external wounds. The bodies showed no signs of a fight or struggle on the outside. Whatever had caused these devastating injuries had done so without leaving cuts, bruises, or other marks on the skin. This was almost impossible to explain naturally. How can someone suffer such massive internal injuries without any external damage. But the most disturbing discovery was what was missing from the bodies. Dubinina was missing her tongue, eyes, lips, and most of her facial tissue. Zolotaryov and Kolevatov were missing their eyebrows and eyes. The forensic expert suggested these injuries happened after death, possibly from being in a fast-moving stream of snow, like an avalanche. But many people found this explanation hard to believe. Since when does snow remove body parts? The condition of the bodies raised serious questions about what had happened in their final moments. Natural causes could possibly explain some of the injuries after death, but others seemed deliberate. The missing soft tissue from the faces and the precise nature of some of the damage suggested something more sinister than natural decomposition. The discovery of these 4 bodies changed the entire investigation. What had started as a search and rescue mission for missing hikers had become a murder investigation, even though the official cause of death was listed as hypothermia and natural causes. The radioactive mystery. One of the strangest parts of the Dyatlov Pass mystery was that some of the hikers' clothes had high levels of radiation. This made the case even more confusing and raised questions about what might have happened to the group in their last days. The radiation wasn't a small amount that could be ignored. It was strong enough to be easily detected by the equipment used by investigators in 1959. This showed that the contamination was serious. When the investigators checked the hikers' clothing, they found radiation levels much higher than what is normally found in nature. This discovery led to theories about secret Soviet weapons testing in the area. The northern Ural Mountains were known to be used for military experiments. Because this area was so far from cities and towns, it was a good place to test dangerous weapons without being seen. Maybe the hikers had accidentally seen or gotten too close to one of these secret tests. The timing also makes people wonder. In the late 1950s, the Soviet Union was busy building and testing nuclear weapons. The government was doing many secret experiments. If the hikers had walked into a secret test area or been exposed to radiation from a recent experiment, this could explain the radiation on their clothes and the government's possible efforts to keep the truth hidden. Some witnesses said they saw strange orange lights in the sky near Dyatlov Pass when the hikers were there. These lights looked like flying balls that moved in odd ways, nothing like airplanes or natural objects. They seemed to move with purpose, as if they were being controlled. Even Lev Ivanov, the man in charge of the investigation, said he saw these strange lights, but his bosses told him to ignore the lights and not write about them in his official report. These orders came from high-level Soviet officials, which suggests that the lights were part of something secret. The cameras found with the hikers were carefully checked to see if radiation had damaged the film. Some film was ruined by the cold and wet conditions, but most of the photos were still usable. This suggests that the radiation exposure happened after the cameras were left behind, not while the hikers were still using them. But there's another idea, something even more troubling. What if the cameras actually took pictures of the source of the radiation? Maybe the hikers photographed secret military equipment or experiments involving radioactive materials. If so, those cameras would have proof of secret Soviet activities. The radiation on the clothes, the strange lights in the sky, and the odd injuries the hikers suffered make it seem like something more than just an accident happened on that mountain. The cameras were the only things that could have shown what really went on in the hikers' last days. Someone may have wanted to hide this evidence. Some cameras and rolls of film were never found. It's possible that the most important photos, the ones that could have shown the truth, were taken away before the official investigation began. Only one camera, found on the body of Zolotaryov, might have had the pictures that explained what the group really saw before they died. What the cameras revealed. When investigators developed the film from the cameras found at Dyatlov Pass, they discovered important clues about the group's final days. The first pictures showed a close group of friends enjoying their trip. They were smiling, laughing, and working together as they skied, set up camp, and ate meals around the campfire. There were no signs of arguments, stress, or fear. But the last few pictures were the most interesting and troubling. These final images showed the group setting up their tent on the snowy slopes of Ural Mountain. The hikers looked calm and prepared, working well together even in the tough weather. There was no sign of panic or danger. Still, some things in these last photos confused the investigators. A few pictures had strange shadows in the background that no one could explain. Some photos were taken quickly, without careful framing, as if the hikers were in a hurry to capture something unexpected. Another mystery was the number of cameras. Investigators expected to find 4 cameras, but photo experts noticed that at least 6 cameras had been used. This means some cameras and film were either lost or secretly removed before the investigation. One of these mystery cameras belonged to Zolotaryov, whose body was found in a ravine. He was an experienced photographer and had joined the trip at the last minute. Why did he bring an extra camera? What was he planning to photograph? No one knows, and the film from his second camera has never been explained. The photos also showed that the group was well prepared for their trip. Their clothes and gear looked in good shape, and their cameras were working. But one detail stood out: a broken light filter on Krivonischenko's camera. The filter was cracked, even though it was inside a protective case. This should have been impossible unless someone broke it on purpose. This strange damage made investigators wonder if something violent had happened. Some of the last photos also showed lights far away in the sky, but they were blurry and unclear. These pictures matched reports from other witnesses who said they saw strange glowing lights near the pass around the time of the tragedy. Maybe the hikers saw these lights too and tried to photograph them. In the end, the cameras told the story of the group's journey, from their happy start to their final night on the mountain. But the most important photos, the ones that might have shown what really happened, were either missing or too damaged to develop. The cover-up theory. Many researchers believe the Soviet government hid the real truth about what happened at Dyatlov Pass. There are signs that point to a deliberate effort to keep both the public and the investigators from knowing the full story. For years, the case files were kept secret. When they were finally made public, many documents were missing or blacked out. Important pieces of evidence had disappeared, and some witnesses said they were warned not to talk about what they saw. Even the lead investigator, Lev Ivanov, was ordered to close the case quickly and blame the deaths on a vague, compelling natural force. One of the strangest parts of the suspected cover-up was how the cameras were handled. Most of the film from the hikers' cameras was developed and shared, but not all. Some cameras and the photos they might have taken were never fully explained. The camera found with Zolotaryov's body remains a mystery. What did he capture? Why was this film never released? These unanswered questions suggest that certain images may have been hidden on purpose. Some believe the hikers saw something they weren't meant to, possibly secret military tests. The Soviet Union was known to perform dangerous weapons experiments in isolated places, and the Ural Mountains were perfect for this. If the hikers accidentally photographed secret equipment or weapons, this could explain why the case was quickly shut down and classified. The strange radioactive contamination found on some of the hikers' clothes added to the suspicion. The levels were too high to come from normal exposure. This suggests they came into contact with something radioactive during their trip, possibly connected to the military's activities in the area. Maybe their cameras recorded this proof, and those photos were removed. These mysterious details make many people think that the truth about Dyatlov Pass was covered up and may never be fully revealed. The final revelation. After decades of investigation and speculation, the truth about what the cameras found deep in Dyatlov Pass revealed is both simple and far more terrifying than anyone expected. The images tell the haunting story of 9 young adventurers who saw something on that mountain they were never meant to witness. The evidence suggests the hikers accidentally stumbled upon a secret Soviet military test, possibly involving radioactive weapons or classified equipment. Their cameras may have captured images of experimental gear, military personnel, or operations so sensitive that the government could not allow them to be seen. When the group realized what they had photographed, they understood they were in grave danger. Their frantic escape from the tent in the dead of night wasn't the result of an avalanche or some natural disaster. It was the result of human intervention. Armed soldiers or secret operatives likely confronted the hikers, forcing them to flee without warm clothes or supplies. The slashes found on their tent walls, cut from the inside, suggest the group tried to escape quickly, but was under pressure from threats outside. What happened next was a desperate struggle for survival in the frozen wilderness. Some of the hikers succumbed to hypothermia as they hid in the forest. Others, especially those found in the ravine, bore injuries more consistent with beatings or torture than accidental falls or exposure. Their broken ribs, crushed skulls, and missing body parts hint at violent human encounters, not natural causes. The most damning evidence, the photographs that could have exposed what they saw, was likely removed or destroyed. The mysterious camera found on Zolotaryov's body may have been missed during the cleanup, but its film was either ruined or hidden away, never to be released. In the end, the Soviet government covered up the incident to protect state secrets and avoid a scandal that could have embarrassed the nation on the world stage. The official explanation of a compelling natural force was a convenient lie crafted to bury the truth forever. These 9 young hikers did not die by accident or by some strange natural event. They died because they unknowingly captured something forbidden, something the powerful could never allow to come to light. What do you think really happened on that mountain? Do you believe the government covered up the truth? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more mysterious stories like this one.